on, homies? My name is John Solo, and today's subject of discussion is a Lilo and Stitch theory. This movie came out smack dab in the middle of my childhood. I have surprisingly vivid memories of kids in my class competing over who could do the best Stitch impersonation. Yes, I'll admit that I was one of those kids, but I was not deemed the best. I was the second best. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride, am I right? I've always really loved Lilo and Stitch, and I really enjoyed the television series that came after it. It was one of the few television series that, in my personal opinion, held up as great as the movie did. It was always so cool to me that they further explored the universe that the movie takes place in, and it was really interesting seeing some of Jumba's experiments that led up to the creation of our hero, Experiment 626. Interestingly though, no matter how much the universe was explored, nowhere in the television series, nor in the original movie, nor in the sequel movie, nor in the other movie, nor in the anime, do we learn anything about Lilo and Nani's parents. Outside of their death, we don't really know anything significant about the two, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that death isn't a significant thing, but I always thought it would be cool to learn about what kind of people they were, or how they raised Lilo and Nani, or really, anything at all. Well, lucky for me, and anyone else who's as interested, that's exactly what this theory is discussing. According to this theory, Lilo and Nani's parents were CIA agents. Yeah, CIA agents, that's cool, right? Or, at least cool in a kind of weird way. Look, I'll admit that after I first found this theory, I was like, nah. But after I did some of my own research to verify what the theory was claiming, I was like, okay. So please, I'm asking you guys to listen to the entire theory before you write this one off. So for this theory, we're gonna start at the end of the film, actually. For those who need a refresher, at the end of the movie, after the epic action sequence where Stitch saves Lilo from Captain Gantu, the Grand Councilwoman who sentenced Stitch to exile pays a visit to Lilo and Nani. She essentially says that it's her duty to collect Stitch, places him in cuffs, and marches him on board her ship. It's during this scene that she runs into the alleged social worker who is assigned to take care of Lilo and Nani, Cobra Bubbles. I say alleged because when she asks Cobra if she recognizes him from somewhere, he says that they met in 1973 at Roswell when he was with the CIA. Okay, wait a second. We're supposed to believe that a CIA agent who had interactions with extraterrestrials walked away from his position to become a social worker? I'm not really buying that. I don't think anyone would walk away from a position like that unless he or she had a very good reason. Something like, I don't know, maybe his best friend died and then he promised that he would take care of or look after his kids? Oh, wait, maybe this is the case. Maybe Lilo and Nani's mother and father were good friends with Cobra Bubbles, or we could even take it a step further and say that they worked with him, because if Taken taught us anything, it's that agents only hang out with other agents. Think about this, if they were good friends, it would also add some logic to Lilo being left in Nani's care for so long. No other social worker would have just ignored Lilo's bad behavior, or how often she was alone, or even the state of their house. She would have just been taken out of the home, or there would have been some form of intervention far before the events of the movie. As Bubble puts it, they are in the sheltered harbor of his patients. He visits rather frequently because he genuinely does care about them, and he doesn't want to separate them unless he has to, because he knows how unhappy it will make both of them and how unhappy it would make their parents. I personally would go as far as to say that Cobra Bubbles is not a social worker at all. I would say that he's still a CIA agent who's claiming to be a social worker to protect his identity. I say this because at the end of the film, when the Grand Councilwoman says that her or other aliens will be making periodic visits to Lilo and Nani's house to make sure everything's okay, he says, I was afraid you were gonna say that. This is gonna be difficult to explain at headquarters. What kind of social worker calls his office headquarters, and why would he have to explain the situation to the higher ups at the office anyway? He could just as easily say, yep, they're doing fine. They have a dog now. And that's it. Here's the thing, guys, and make sure you follow along really closely here because this could get confusing. If Cobra is still with the CIA, he would have had no reason to start checking in on Lilo and Nani unless there was some sort of prior connection, because checking in on orphans isn't something that the CIA does. The most reasonable assumption to make is that he was connected with their parents in some way, like he worked with them or was friends with them, and you could even make the claim that they just worked with him in the social work office, but then a couple of other issues come up. If he isn't with the CIA anymore, then then that means he legitimately walked away from a position where he was able to interact with extraterrestrials, which is fine if that isn't what made him happy. But if he is a social worker, then he has no real reason to tell the higher-ups at his office that there are aliens coming down periodically to check in on Lilo and Nani. Realistically, I would go as far as to say that he shouldn't or even couldn't tell his peers about it, because any information on extraterrestrials is probably classified. But at the end of the movie, he says he's gonna have to explain the situation to headquarters, which means he's gotta still be with the CIA. But if he's still with the CIA and he was never actually a social worker, then that means he would have never had a reason to check up on Lilo and Nani in the first place. That is, unless they had a prior connection, and the most realistic prior connection to assume is their parents, whether they worked together or were friends or whatever. And now we've come full circle. I'm going to make the bold claim that not only is this theory possible, but that it's probable. I believe that Lilo and Nani's parents were actually CIA agents who were either A, killed in a storm, or B, killed in action, and the storm was a cover-up story. In addition to the whole friendship thing, you could assume that Lilo and Nani's parents were also workers within the extraterrestrial division, and maybe that's why Cobra was assigned to look after them. As the Grand Councilwoman shows by recognizing Cobra Bubbles, the aliens clearly know who the agents are, and maybe the CIA was worried that the aliens were going to visit Lilo and Nani's house or something along those lines. I think that's why Cobra Bubbles doesn't act surprised when he realizes what's actually going on with Stitch. He's been sitting around preparing for this for a while. So that, my friends, is today's theory. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave some words of praise in the comment section down below, or hit that like button. And as always, I've got links to my social networking sites in the description down below. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Go give those a like or follow. If you'd like to learn more about this theory, I have a link to the Reddit post that inspired this video in the description down below. I use the word inspired because although the theories are similar, the original theorist and I reached the same conclusion in very different ways. Thank you guys so much for watching. In case you forgot, my name is John Solo, and I'll see you next time.